I'm pulling them out, and I was like, no, you can't do this, and now I can say, yes. Any other questions about the recycling program? Thank you for taking the time to be here.
After rinsing.
Yes, anything you recycle, you should rinse out, because we don't want bugs or rodents around your place. So it's better if you rinse them first.
Mayor, today I heard a very distressing tone at City Council in regards to Houston First and the Visitor Convention Bureau and the various organizations that were put together to do certain things of capital projects for the city of Houston. And the tone that I heard, I don't know if you concur, that the city council may be in the process of wanting to dissolve those because they don't have a feel that they have enough input into what these organizations do. How do you feel about that?
I think you misread council. I think that there's a lot of chatter right now because there are public discussions about whether the Houston First Corporation and the Greater Houston Convention Visitors Bureau ought to consolidate some functions, continue to be separate organizations, but consolidate some functions to save money and for more efficiencies, and there are folks who aren't happy about that. It's a perfectly legitimate conversation to be had, and both of these entities have governing boards that will make those decisions, and it won't come to council. But what's happened is that both sides have taken their argument to City Council, and City Council wants to know what's going on, and so we'll do our best to provide some neutral information to council members. But it's I don't think there's any even a remote possibility council members would want to unwind our Houston First Corporation. It's proven too beneficial to the city of Houston. We wouldn't be breaking ground today or this week on our new convention center hotel without the ability of Houston First to manage that process. It's been very helpful to us.
Mayor, can you walk us through the origins of the hoarding ordinance, why it's important, and whether you think it strikes the right balance as it's written?
The fact that there is a TV show out there about hoarders tells you that the problem of hoarding is something that cities across America have to deal with. And while an individual hoarder in a single-family home can put themselves in a dangerous situation, a hoarder in a property with in close proximity to their neighbors, such as a townhome or a condominium, provides a fire hazard and potentially a lot of dangerous impacts on their neighbors. And so this is an issue that has been popping up over and over again. We have worked with mental health professionals, we've worked with the police through the Department of Neighborhoods to informally resolve some of these situations, but it became clear that having some tools to allow us through legitimate public health and public safety avenues to intervene was beneficial. This is as we often do, we're taking a first step ordinance. It only applies to townhomes and condominiums where you have that shared building. We've had a number of inquiries about whether we should in fact apply it to single-family properties as well, and in fact the fire department would like us to, because depending on what someone hoards, for example, there are a lot of people who stack up newspapers for some unknown reason, wanted to save newspapers. That is an extreme fire hazard. There are other materials that people will hoard that provide danger for other reasons. And then, of course, we have animal hoarders, which we regularly have to intervene on. And so there was some sentiment to making a more comprehensive ordinance, but we decided this was a good step forward. Let's see how it works, how often we have to invoke it, and then if we need to, we'll come back and we'll apply it citywide.
Can you speak to the concerns that some council members have had about this criminalizing mental illness and that balance between the neighbor's rights and addressing existing limits?
I mean, the goal is not to write someone a bunch of tickets for being a hoarder, because that's not gonna solve the problem. The goal is to provide a mechanism for public safety professionals and or mental health professionals to make an intervention. And we believe we have struck an ordinance that allows us to do that. If a lot of the, I'm a landlord. I own a number of pieces of property with fellow investors, and we've had to deal with hoarding situations. I don't think, I mean, it clearly is a matter of a mental illness, and most of them don't want to live in the kind of conditions they can ultimately evolve into. And so the opportunity not only to protect the public safety of people around them, but to make an intervention that can improve these people's lives is one that we have to take advantage of.
And what's the hitch with mandating treatment versus referring treatment? Because some of the homeowners I've talked to wish that this could be mandated treatment.
Again, yeah, you'll find a pattern since I've been mayor where we've jumped off into a lot of areas that the city could have regulated over the years and chose not to. And we think a lot of these ordinances are important, but we would rather take a giant step forward, evaluate, and then take another giant step forward than to make a big leap off into where we're not sure what the impacts will be. And so we think this is a good first step ordinance. I expect it to be evaluated timely, perhaps in a year, to see how often it's been used and what the fallout has been, and then we'll decide if we need to tweak it moving forward.
Mayor, on the committee the other day, there was a discussion of this new strike down program to help with
Strike off.
strike off program related to demolishing blighted buildings, that sort of thing. It was sort of discussed as a slam dunk solution. I'm curious how it wasn't implemented earlier, or sort of what the hurdles were, what the risks are in getting into it, if it has the potential to help knock down so many more buildings.
Back when I was a council member, so I can't remember how long ago it was, we actually created the Land Assembly Redevelopment Authority process, the so-called LARA lot process, as a mechanism to various taxing entities foreclosing on property and taking those property into inventory. And we put a lot of safeguards in. We limited it to certain neighborhoods in Houston, because none of us as taxing entities really wanted to have the liability of taking on these properties that we didn't have a use for. It's long past the time to reevaluate our overall LARA program and how it's working, but it's been clear that with our extreme focus on demolitions, that we have, even though we do more demolitions than we have in years, we really significantly ramped up the program, there are thousands of properties across the city that could be removed. And while a vacant lot may be unsightly and you have to go mow it, a decaying building is a magnet for crime and detracts from property values in the neighborhood in a much more significant way. And so we have been moving in this direction for a long time. What can we do to allow us to tear down more buildings faster? Now, why would we not want to do it? Because when we take this action, it becomes our ultimate responsibility. We have to make sure that we maintain those lots. But we're already moving in this direction, and this is a cleaner process. And I hear consistently from council members, we need to do more demolitions. I hear it from neighborhoods, and so this is the mechanism to do that.
And do you foresee, I know lots where the ownership is murky and the city gets called in after it's above 9 inches or whatnot. I mean, are we going to wind up waiting to the 9-inch point on the city-owned lots as well, or is that going to be more?
Well, among the other things that we've done in this last year is we created a mow-down program where we are contracting with neighborhood associations. I mean, we're going to apply the same standards to ourselves as to property owners, but we have more mechanisms to keep these lots under control. But no, they're not gonna be, short groomed. They're gonna be, we're gonna be maintaining a lot of vacant lots. Obviously, the goal is not to keep them in inventory. The goal is to take them over, get the demolition done, and get them back out into the marketplace. You rightly mentioned that a lot of the reason that these places fall into decay is that someone will die without a will. It's unclear who owns the property. They don't sort it out. The taxes mount up, and the taxes get higher than the value of the property. Then people walk away. And so this allows us to just kind of cut through all that and pick up the properties.
Mayor, if you could sort of describe to us how things stand right now with Uber and Lyft, and also if you have any response to the companies being sued for accepting payments.
Council member, I would already have this issue before council, except that council members wanted the opportunity to hear from a couple of experts in the industry, and they will be hearing from them, I believe, this afternoon. We are issuing citations both against drivers and against the company for those where they're taking payment. It is against city ordinance for them to accept payment, and we're enforcing our ordinance. We have nothing to do with what the taxi industry may or may not do in terms of their relationship with Uber and Lyft.
So as of now, where do you see that conversation going? Do you see an ultimate decision coming soon?
As I said, it would already be before council. It's my goal to get it before council by the end of this month. I would have liked to have done it in March, but we couldn't schedule the experts in that council members insisted that they really needed to hear from. And I will present a proposal so the council can complain about whatever I present in the very near future.
Mayor, the C-Smart program over at Municipal Court, the city of Houston made a major investment in that. And for you, what is your...
Major, that's a mild phrase.
All right, well, it's a mild phrase, but what is your assessment of where it's going to go? And at the end, what kind of packaging do you think there's going to be before you feel comfortable enough to market it across the country?
We've been dealing with the appropriate municipal courts case management system, trying to find the appropriate municipal courts case management system for more than a decade. This particular program, C-Smart, began under the White administration. I don't know exactly when it started. And it's had some setbacks. It was originally an open-ended contract. I brought Charles Thompson in just over 2 years ago, and among other things, he brought to council a max price contract so we know what the problems were. There aren't any other courts that operate exactly like we do across the United States, which is why we've been unable to find a successful off-the-shelf product. Now, that doesn't mean that once we get our product completely working, that we can't in turn go to some of the bigger courts and say, we have great functionality, we'd like to recoup some of our costs, and we hope we can do that. But even if we don't offer it to any other court, we believe it will finally provide a solution to what we need. Now, we have a max price contract. There are performance guarantees in the contract. They have to meet those performance guarantees. We would have legal recourse if they don't. It's not expected to be in testing in a more live situation until September, because at the same time we're doing this, and this was discussed in council, we have purchased a new records management system for the police department, and which would help solve some of the problems that have been talked about in the police department as well. How do we keep track of all the case files and so forth? And the two of them at some point have to have a point of connection. But the important aspect is it's going to take a lot of our resources within the IT department to make sure that smooth transition in police, and that's happening this summer. And then I redeploy all those resources in IT to the municipal courts transition this fall. And so along about September, we hope to be able to begin nailing down the issues on it. I do.